Yeah, so thank you guys for coming on today. So I'm Alexis, I'm the CEO of Finessed Media, and I actually did a cover of Didn't See It Coming when you guys first released it, and I have just been following you guys ever since. Can all of you guys just start by introducing yourselves?
Yeah, I am David, the lead singer of the band, the youngest brother of the three. Yeah.
Nice. And Scott?
Yeah, I'm Scott. I'm the eldest brother. And Eric is the third brother that's not here joining us today.
Nice. And Jordan?
Yeah, I'm Jordan Roach. I'm not a brother. And I play the guitar.
Cool.
That plays the drum.
Oh yeah, I'm the drummer.
Cool.
And Eric plays bass.
Nice.
Yeah, the band got started. So brothers, you'd think that we just like grew up playing our whole lives together. And while we all kind of played instruments growing up, I am 8 years older than David. So we never were like in high school together. All of us are 4 years apart. Jordan and I played together in high school, but it wasn't until all of us kind of got older and even after college, when, I don't know, age didn't really become a thing anymore. And we're like, why don't we just make our own band together with bros? And it was just kind of a random idea. And then we just decided we'll force ourselves to play a show. So we booked this little show at a coffee shop nearby before we even had any material. And we're like, okay, we got like a couple months, let's come up with some stuff. And we obviously played some covers. And it just went really well, and had some songs that people really liked. And then we made a little like live session of those because we couldn't really afford to like get in the studio record yet. So we just did some like live session YouTube videos. And really, I mean, we had years and years of playing in different bands and our own individual experiences. So it wasn't like total overnight success, I would say, but really that one YouTube video that we made starting out led us to being discovered by our current management, XX Artists in LA. Mm-hmm. And then they were able to use that video to essentially get us a record deal, or at least get the attention of the guy, and he came and saw us live and then signed us. And so that's really kind of how we got started.
Nice. And who usually takes charge in the group?
Oh, it depends what it is.
Yeah.
I think at the beginning, kind of the more organizational things, or like kind of business things and getting started and organized, maybe myself the most. But then when it comes to lyrics and like songwriting and getting those money hooks that you look for, it's definitely David.
You guys are talented. I mean, I played your music I work with a ton of different artists and different A&R reps and managers. I played your music for some of them just because I'm always introducing people to the artists that I work with. And all of them, every single one of them said that they loved you and they thought that you were going somewhere. So yeah, you guys are so talented, and it's exciting to see you grow too. And I know you said that your success wasn't overnight. So was most of your success from just that YouTube video, or was it mostly through the playlist? How did that work?
Sorry, David, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it kind of depends on which success you're talking about too. I think we've had, what's funny is we feel, I mean, it kind of just the arc of any artist, like our first album, in terms of just sheer production value, because of the finances and stuff and where we were at, it definitely has felt like an upward trend in terms of like the quality of the sounds of the instruments and things like that in our recordings. But ironically, our first album has still been our most successful in terms of commercial success. So like getting TV shows and syncs and all those things. That happened for the first album. I can't remember, maybe like 5 or 6 months after release. Like we started to get some of those, and we got the Pretty Little Liars ones a few times, and the Bachelor spinoff, and then we had one even just like last year or the year before for that newer show on, I want to say NBC or CBS, God Friended Me. So we've had a lot of first album hits for like the syncs and licensing. But then obviously with like shows, we've been able to kind of go a little more upward in terms of like shows and what we can sell and the hot spots that we know we have fans at in terms of like, you know, the size of a room or whatever. And then we kind of realized that we didn't really hit well in Portland. I think our sound is pretty poppy, pretty like we had a lot more success in Seattle and in LA, but Portland, I think, wants a little bit more of a grungy alternative sound. And it's, unless you're like playing the Moda Center or Crystal Ballroom, and we're not quite there yet. So kind of the smaller places, I don't know. It's just like, it hasn't been as well received for whatever reason. So
We're not weird enough.
Yeah.
I could see that. Yeah.
A little too straight edge.
What was
Too
that,
happy.
Jordan?
I said I feel like I'm pretty weird.
It's a different weird. It's like a dark, hide in a corner weird.
Yeah, you also have a little bit of an R&B vibe to some of your music too, which I think is more LA, San Francisco Bay Area, New York City. Portland definitely is more indie folk, alternative.
Yeah.
And for all of you, did you just start making music just because of that one performance, or were all of you making music prior to the performance, that first performance that you had scheduled?
We were all making music. Jordan and I, wow, we're 31 now, and we started our very first band together as we've been best friends our whole life, pretty much. We started our first band, we were like maybe 12, 13.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so again, tons of experience with writing songs and learning how to be in a group, in a band, and kind of figuring out our individual roles and where to sacrifice for the sake of the common goal, and really how to like kind of talk about, you know, and communicate, you know, what's the focus of the band going to be, you know, like are we going to be looking to add a bunch of guitar solos and drum solos in the music as we write, or is it going to be really focused on, you know, lyrics and melody and the vocals that David brings and all the harmonies that he can do. And so I would say Eric, myself, and Jordan probably had, obviously just by age, had a little bit more experience, but David just naturally had that writing skill. And I think he just definitely, that's like his God-given ability to just come up with these amazing hooks and choruses and harmonies. And so I don't think he necessarily needed to go through as many terrible songwriting sessions to learn how to write a good one. You know, Jordan and I, man, we don't tell people our old band names because we're afraid people will go look up our old music and
wait, let's hear them. Let's hear them.
how bad some of it was. So
can we get one? Can we get at least one?
Find your
we'll
spot.
think about it.
It was that bad?
No, it's just not to the level of where we are now. You know, I think
it was a little bit of a different genre though too.
Yeah.
I think you guys were kind of well, especially because like pop for us, even I remember being younger and like asking for a Nirvana CD when I was like 9 years old. And like those guys kind of got me, like I'd always been into music, but they were always like the ones in the bands. And I was just, you know, like Scott said, such a big age difference that I was not really old enough to even be in the bands for as long as I can remember. So then it was just like, once I hit about senior year, that's when we started to pursue like this group, or at least just like start to talk about it. We weren't really like officially doing anything yet, but that was when it was, for me, songwriting before that had kind of just been like messing around in GarageBand, like just whether it be like covering things or just making things. And I didn't play piano at that time. So I was just doing things with my voice, lots of just like beatboxing the drums and singing every little harmony that would have made the chord progression for a piano, or like literally all a cappella, and never really like, oh, I want to write music to sing it and perform it, but just kind of for fun, because I had fun making random harmony parts or whatever it was. But then I didn't really think about like writing until we all started talking about doing music together. But
who does all of the mixing and mastering and the production for you?
Yeah, I think we like to be as hands-on as possible. And I think we've driven 2 producers into retirement, actually, with our last couple projects. But I think it's something where we just like to have input, and I don't think that we're like actually these like super overbearing, difficult artists to work with. But it was more of a timing thing. That's just a joke that we really like to make. But yeah, so our very first album was super indie, more of a home studio, and Skylar, our buddy Skylar, that we became really good friends with, produced, engineered, mixed, everything. And then, like David said, we kind of were able to take a step up in terms of facility and equipment and production. And that step was when we started working with a guy named Brandon Rush, who is in the band Priory. And he definitely taught us a lot and turned us into about as much of gear nerds as we'll probably ever be. And just exposing us to kind of a real deal studio experience. And so we worked with a couple different engineers through him that kind of helped with the actual studio. And then he would produce and mix. And then we send it to a different guy to master, local Portland guy.
That was for the EP after the first album.
Yeah, and so this next step that we took for all the new music that we're just now starting to release, we did work with Brandon Rush from Priory in his studio again in Portland. And then we got an opportunity to have a guy named Craig Alvin mix all this new music we're releasing. And Craig Alvin is known for winning a Grammy on Casey Musgrave's album.
Oh, wow.
And so that was a really cool experience. We got to go to Nashville and sit in a couple days with him as he worked on our songs, and just to kind of see what that's like and what a mixer does. I mean, I think a lot of times when you're starting out, or if you're not in a band or you're not pursuing music, you don't really know what goes into mixing and mastering and all that stuff. And so to see and even just get to meet him for us was a really big deal. And so we're excited about kind of that, again, another step up, talking about like not necessarily overnight success, but yeah, I mean, I just think he did a really great job, and I think this stuff sounds better than ever, and we're just really excited about it.
That's awesome. Congratulations on getting that placement. That's, to work with someone at that level really helps project your career. So congratulations to you guys for being able to obtain someone like that. That's great. Can each of you go around and talk about maybe 1 or 2 struggles that you faced either individually or within the band, and talk about how you've learned from them? It might be helpful to start with something prior to your signing, because we have a huge audience of people who have not been signed. So can you start with, why don't we start with David to talk about some struggles?
This will be short. Like these guys said, that's what I'm probably not the right person to ask, so I will keep it short and let them talk, because like Scott was saying, I was really, really fortunate to have older brothers at that point, and like Jordan basically is a brother. because they kind of took the brunt of that. So I will speak on their behalf. Like I lucked out having older brothers because they had all these bands growing up and kind of went through all that nitty gritty, learned all the stuff, did all the dirty work. And we've still had, I mean, that's the thing too, even though we're on a label, it is an indie label, we've still had to go through tough shows. We still had to play shows even on this label that sucked. And we played in a junkyard once. Like, what is this? And it's just like, we've definitely still had those moments. So I also don't want people to think like, oh, I'm signed, everything's great now. Like, it doesn't happen like that either. But I know for me, in terms of pre-signing, didn't have a whole lot to go through because I was just in high school and middle school just doing choir. Like, I wasn't really pursuing music yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of hopped in, and it really didn't take long for us to get the manager and get the label. But I know that for them, they had been doing music for years and years and years with different bands and kind of did all that crazy stuff and kind of learned a lot. So I was able to jump onto that ship with them, having already gotten that jump start from them. So, and they can talk more about the crazy stuff they did before I was a part of it too.
Cool. Jordan, you want to go off next?
Sure. You just were like, you want to know about pre-sign struggles.
If you have some that are post-signing, that's okay too, because it's sometimes helpful for people to know about them. But if you have some pre-signing, those would also be helpful.
We probably have more problems now. No, I'm just kidding.
You can talk about it.
Different problem.
We're an open.
Well, pre-signing is the struggles is just as a musician, you're trying to figure out what you want to do with the music you're writing. Like, do you want to play a bunch of shows? Do you want to try and record? Do you want to just keep writing and rewriting and figure out your, I don't know, genre? Or do you want to play and figure that out? So the tough part is just like, how do I show people, and how do I want to show people? Like, do I just want to play at a bar for 4 hours? Because that's what we did sometimes. And that was fun, but then it was also like, well, we're getting paid $50 and some drunk people are listening. But still, those are cool shows. So I think that's the struggle, is like figuring out like what do you do with the music that you're writing, you know?
Mm-hmm. How about post-signing?
Just because I feel like post-signing, the struggle is you do more than you think you do. So like for people who want to be on a label or have a manager or stuff, these are all good things, but no one's really going to do things for you. You still have to show your team and your label and everybody that this is what you want, this is my vision, blah, blah. Like even the biggest artists, you know, whatever, I don't know, are still doing that, and they just have a team to help assist and facilitate that. So that's probably the biggest, I mean, it's a struggle because I feel like I learned that, I think maybe as a band also, but I feel like we learned that a little too late. I feel like we were just starting to really realize that. I mean, we kind of knew that, but yeah.
How about for you, Scott?
I mean, for us, always really being in bands, I think it is different than pursuing music as, you know, like a singer-songwriter or like an individual artist, because a big struggle, no matter where you're at in your career, is just how to function as a band, as a group. And is everything always going to be equal? Is it always going to be, you know, we all have to agree if we're going to decide yes on something, or is it going to be like a majority vote rules on our decision making? And then just roles, you know, like sometimes it's hard being in a band when the bass player thinks they're the most important person and they're actually hoping and wanting to be the lead singer and do the guitar solos on their bass, or like a drummer that just doesn't know how to like lay back.
Not like that. We're not like calling out Eric right now.
No, it's not Eric. This is not Eric. It might be somebody else I played with back in the day, though. I won't say any names. But like even as a drummer for myself, I'll just stick to myself. You know, like learning what the most important part is on any particular song, and realizing that my role isn't necessarily to always be standing out and flashy and, trying to make the whole thing a drum solo. And so I think that's definitely a big struggle early on and throughout the process of being in bands. And there's a lot of bands that we had that broke up because people couldn't figure out how to like coexist with one another. So yeah.
How do you guys navigate those kinds of situations? So say David writes a song, Jordan doesn't like it, and Scott, you are neutral. What happens there? How do you guys navigate those situations?
Usually I'm the neutral one because I have to be the vote for the brothers.
Yeah. If it weren't for Jordan, we would have broken up by now. He keeps us together.
Okay, so
maybe Jordan, you talk about how you do it. It's gotten better, that's for sure.
What'd you say?
It's just us, we had struggles first album, pretty big struggles, just learning how to, like, recording the first album. Because at that point, I was still like 18 and still a chump and like thought that I was hot stuff because I didn't have to go through any struggles, really, like not that much. Like I showed up, we released that video, and we got signed. Yeah. Like that's how it felt for me. Mm-hmm. Even if that's not exactly how it happened, like that's just how it felt in my head. So I was like, oh, I'm the missing piece. Like I'm cool. But that's obviously, we've outgrown that. But there's still, we still have disagreements, but we definitely, like, over the years, it's just, I can confidently say we can healthily kind of overcome any sort of like disagreement we hit now, and everything's, we still disagree, we still have arguments, but it's not anything like it was in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was it more of sibling rivalry than anything?
I don't know about sibling rivalries, because we've never been like brothers that like hate each other and fight a bunch, but more just because the nature of being brothers, you're not afraid. Like me talking to Jordan, even though we're super close and we feel brothers, there's still things that I probably wouldn't say to Jordan that I would say to my brother because they're blood, and that's just how it is. Like when you have your siblings, you don't really hold anything back. Mm-hmm. And so that can be a good thing and a bad thing. So I think early on it was too much of a bad thing, and we would just cut deep just to cut deep because we're brothers. But now it's like, I think it's a good thing that we can be honest, but we found that balance on like still being like kind and gracious and empathetic, and not just being a jerk, but mm-hmm. using that honesty to our advantage rather than letting it become something that's like hurtful or poisonous.
Yeah, and I think that honesty has really become one of our biggest strengths, because when you're writing music, like you said, what if somebody brings an idea and somebody doesn't like it? And I mean, when somebody shows a song, like, we're honest with each other. And I think at first, at first it's not as easy. And then you just start to learn, like, okay, how am I going to be honest, but like not get all dramatic and like, I don't know, make it personal, and still get your point across or your opinion heard. And so I think also a lot of it's just like us not taking stuff personal too. So it's like, maybe we don't even necessarily change a ton about how we talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Well, we do, but you just learn to say like, man, okay, if they don't like it, then we'll just, I'll go back and work on it, or push it to the side for a little bit. And I think probably, I don't know that David really has that problem. Usually when he writes something, it's everybody's on board. Mm-hmm. But the rest of us have to learn the rejection.
No, that's definitely true. I definitely have had songs that I've written that I feel like we've had moments where that was something I definitely had to figure out, is when they didn't like something, like, okay, well, like it was hurtful at first. Like, you can't help but take it personally because you've been just writing a song. And that's the thing too. If there was advice, this might be going off on a tangent, but something that people should know if you're starting out is find people. You don't need to have brothers. You don't need to have siblings. If you don't have people that do, that's fine, but you should find a community, even if you're a singer-songwriter, people to, because it can be hard how to do that, you know, when someone's like, hey, this isn't that good. But without that, then, you know, you could just be releasing a bunch of junk and you would never know. Like, it's good to get that feedback from somebody else, because it can only help you. And if you're somebody who can't take that and will just push everyone away when they tell you something's not good, and you're just like, no, this is great, I know it's great, then like you're gonna have a hard time finding people to work with, and nobody's gonna work with you. And you definitely need to have that balance of like pursuing your vision. Like if you're passionate about something, you can definitely take it and advocate for it, but also being willing to take that feedback, which was something I really struggled with early on, because I was like, no, this, like, I just worked on this for 3 hours. It has to be good, but maybe it really just wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. And you try to write a new one or work on it or whatever.
Who is your guys' community that helps with feedback or helps with giving you guys ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the songwriting itself, I mean, we feel like 4 is enough cooks in the kitchen. So, and we're pretty hard on each other and on the music. And I don't think it's in necessarily like, it's not like in a bad way, or like any one of us is trying to force our will on the music. We kind of have this thing where we want this saying where it's, you want to let the song win out. So like whatever the song needs, whatever the song wants, it kind of just takes on its own identity and becomes what it wants to. And I think we definitely all agree and kind of know what our style is.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really force anything too much. We try to just let it come organically, and then kind of put that my brothers and I filter over it when deciding, you know, okay, what songs are going to go on the album now. And even that kind of becomes feedback from fans and people like you that post covers, and like we're like, okay, cool, like this is resonating with people, and you know, people that are really vibing with our messages and the songs and the lyrics and the style of music. This is what they like, and you know, we want to give people more of what they like. And then we'll usually have a couple where we're like trying to be super ambitious and be a little bit more progressive in our sound and chase something that's just fun for us to play.
Mm-hmm. Can you guys talk a little bit about your goals as a band? So where do you see yourself in, say, the next 6 months, the next year, next 5 years? Maybe Jordan can start off this time.
Next 6 months, hopefully we have an album released. It's taken a while. No, we plan on that. Actually, have we told the strategy? I don't know if we've told every. Well,
we haven't talked about it in this conversation.
Okay, but we have. It's like, no.
I think we pretty much said that. Yeah,
releasing music. Yeah, so we have some stuff. So that's, and then hopefully
once a month to. Yeah. You haven't said what that strategy is yet.
Well, I didn't know if we wanted to say that.
We can. Yeah. Once a month, we're going to release a single.
And then into an album, yeah. And then after that, the album's out, hopefully, you know, play them, do some shows, and try to build momentum and get those songs out there, because I feel like we're super stoked on these new songs. I mean, as far as like all of our stuff, I think we're proud of, but I think these are the most us. I think all of us had a lot of what to say about them and stuff. And as far as production quality, it's just unreal. Like, to get your hands on like a good engineer and mixer and stuff is crazy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the 6 months, I don't know. You guys can talk about 5 and 10 years.
Scott, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think our goals, honestly, project to project. I don't think we set a lot of small detailed goals, and not that they're bad. I think it's really important for people to set goals, but we've never really been a group of guys where we're like, we need to get this many more million streams and we want to increase our Instagram followers by this many thousand. I think we're a little bit more laid back in some of those areas. I think our dream has always been really just to do this and make a living and have the opportunity to make this a career, and so I think our goals are always, we have that one big goal that we always want to just keep the ball rolling, keep this career going. And I think really we just look at each individual task, we'll call them, and we just look at each individual thing it's in front of us, and then we move on to the next. So we're not, I don't know if that makes sense. I'm starting to get lost here, but basically just taking it one step at a time. I'll just use that classic cheesy. We're just taking it one step at a time. And I think for us, it's just because we don't want to get bogged down with this need for followers and to always be seen. And I think it's taken us a while to even figure out how we want to use social media. And we're just not the type, it's not in our personalities to just be filming ourselves constantly and do that kind of constant social media thing. And so we've had to learn how to like be more active. And I would say that's an example of a goal that we had, was to like figure out how we can use social media because it's an important tool. And this is my son. And figure out how to make it effective for us because we know that it's important. It's how a good tool to reach people. So that would be an example of a goal that we had, I guess. It's not necessarily like monetary or like associated with numbers or stuff like that.
Yeah. I actually want to segue from what you just said about the social media side, because I think a lot of people get lost in their social media following and they focus a lot on that. So how do you guys manage the business side of everything? Because a lot of artists don't even understand how to do that and they're just focusing on their social media. But you guys have done a very good job at gaining followers for your actual music as opposed to the presence in front of people visually.
Yeah, that's funny too, because I think so many times we even don't really notice it at times. And we didn't notice it for a long time. Like, this is just the most recent example I can think of off the top of my head, but like Justin Bieber's been doing a bunch of those Instagram live videos. And one of the videos he did, because you can like co-live now, he was co-live with Corey Harper, I think his name is, which is one of our like artists also, or artists that people also like that listen to us or something. And so I'm like, Corey Harper, like this guy's Instagram living with Justin Bieber, like he's got to have tons of followers. And he only has 300,000 Spotify listeners, which is slightly more than us. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, why aren't we Instagram living with Justin Bieber right now? Like, because and then like Scott said, and maybe it's hard to say. I think it's hard for us to tell people how to do social media because that's just a reflection of who you are. Us, I am not surprised that our social media count is so much lower than our Spotify count. Because Scott said it, like, we're just not selfie stick, like, what's up, guys? Like, that's not us. And so we probably don't have the most interesting social media. And we do need to know how to use it and utilize it to reflect who we are. But at the same time, we're never going to force ourselves to be that, even if that has more success on social media. Like, we're still going to be who we are. Like, we still, like you said, we've found a way to get listeners without being that on social media. And I think to get to that point, to answer your question, I feel like if you just write good music, work with people that you're passionate and that they're passionate about what you're doing, and they like truly are there to help you and write with you and those things and kind of work on just making good music, it can do well, and it will find people's ears. That's one thing that the Spotify, like we just got our very first editorial playlist spot on Spotify like just this past week.
Wow, congrats.
And so
Which playlist is
the
that?
algorithms, like the algorithms do work. And so I think if you just write good music, Spotify algorithms are great. Like you said, Discover Weekly, Release Radar, all those things are just the algorithm. That's not us getting cool play from real Spotify editorials. That's just our music finding people because it matches something they've listened to or whatever. And so I think even though we've had a label and all these things, we haven't had a ton of like marketing budget or anything. I think if you just write good music and you pour your heart into it, like people, I think when people hear our music, they're saving it and they like it and it resonates with them and they can feel us in the music and like, because we pour our hearts into it, and like it's very, our lyrics, like with Didn't See It Coming, those are very specific lyrics. Like that is a story, and I think people should not be afraid to tell stories about their lives or just stories they can think of. Like it can be fiction too, it doesn't have to be a fact or real stuff, but just pour your hearts into your music and it'll reflect onto the Spotify and the Apple Music. And if people are drawn to it, they're drawn to it. So it's hard to say like do this and you'll get listens. I think if you just do what you got to do, write your music, pour your heart into it, and people will feel that.
Mm-hmm. And does your music reflect true stories most of the time?
It depends. I think it was Eddie Vedder. Was it Eddie Vedder that said that like don't let the truth get in the way of the story?
Yeah, he might have been quoting somebody else too, but
Okay.
he has a famous
Yeah, but basically that, like, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. I think there is a lot of truth in it, a lot, probably like 75%. But there's obviously like, we need something to rhyme here. It might not be perfect. Like it might not be the exact word for word thing, but there is a ton of truth. Right? And everything, pretty much every song is based on something, one of our lives or something we've gone through.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you guys talk about making good music, because a lot of artists will get caught up in just looking at their likes on Instagram. They'll look at their numbers of streams on a daily basis, hoping that they got 1 new follower, 2 new followers, or 3 new followers. But it doesn't work like that, and it doesn't happen overnight. Because even for you now, you've had 22 million streams, but you still are working towards having more, and you don't go from 22 million to 50 million overnight. So congrats to you guys for the accomplishments that you guys have made so far, because it seems like you're doing so well. I love seeing how far you've come from Didn't See It Coming, which is the first song that I've heard from you, to Long Distance. It's amazing how much you guys have skyrocketed. And yes, there's a lot to say for having a label, but there's a lot that you have done in the background that has led you to where you're at today. So with that being said, we have about 15 more minutes before we finish the call. Can we go around and have each of you give 3 gems to aspiring artists?
I will say, like you just touched on it, the label's not everything, and there's lots of different types of labels now when you're talking about indie labels. And so I think if you have songs and you're playing and you're like, I just need to play more, or you're just starting out, if you don't know this, playing live is the best way to improve. And I would say, if I had one piece of advice, you don't need to worry about trying to find a label or even a good management team or anything. If you can find someone to help with booking shows, I think that's like the most important first step when you're starting out, and playing as many shows as you can. And there's going to be horrible ones and rooms with only 5 people in it. It makes you better. It's worth it. So that's one piece of advice. Number 2, probably don't take yourself too seriously. I think, we were just talking about all the social media stuff and kind of creates an unhealthy mindset. And I think it's something that we've gotten pretty good at, is not taking yourself too serious, and really just being open to how your music is going to fit in the world. And we're all not going to be Coldplay or Justin Bieber, John Mayer. And so it doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't valuable. There's lots of music and it reaches people and touches people. And you don't need to be the biggest, most famous person in the world to have your music be important. So not taking yourself too serious. And third piece of advice.
If you've only got two, that's okay.
I might only have two. I would start to get into like talking about money or something like that, but just find a job where you can have flexibility and save up money to spend on your music, because it's not always going to pay for itself at the beginning.
That's a good one. Nice. Cool. And then Jordan?
I was writing them down so I could actually have some stuff.
Nice.
I think you're drinking a Corona, Scott. I was like, that sounds nice. I'd say this is for like super artists starting out playing in rooms. I would say know your room. Like, know how big it is. I think we all came up playing jazz. I know we did because I was there with Scott. We played jazz choir and stuff. But just like know your room. Don't turn up to 11 if you're in a small room and people are trying to chill and have a beer. Like, maybe play a little softer. I don't know. I think just maybe really exercise that, just like know your room. But then that leads to like knowing your audience, and then that leads to people liking this song, and then you start writing more songs like that. So just kind of know your surroundings. Don't be oblivious, because the music it comes from you, but it also, I believe it doesn't really come from you. We're just like these vessels, man. And so this music's not just for you; it's for the listener.
I won't talk long, I promise. But I also think that that's just really impressive. Like, to me as a viewer of shows, if somebody can do what Jordan just said, like, that is so impressive to see an artist who can, like John Mayer. I've heard that there's a place we've played at in LA called Hotel Cafe, really tiny little joint across from where they have like the Oscars or something. And so there's nights where like John Mayer has played a tiny acoustic show the night before he has his big show. And so it's like something like that. Like, John Mayer can go into a room and he can play to 20 people at this tiny little bar. And like, it's an emotional, intimate experience. And it's obviously going to be, he's playing different there than how he is the next night in front of an arena.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is so impressive if you do what Jordan just said, to like be able to be dynamic as an artist.
You stole my time. Another advice would be listen to all kinds of music. Like the things that are on like the pop radio or the popular, they're not listening to other popular music. They're listening to like the old school stuff, and they're getting inspiration from that. And then also, I was trying to write out like find your people. So like find a band that works. Like if they aren't good or you're not vibing, just get out. You're not stuck with them. But when you find a good one, stay committed, but also have fun with them, and just hang out with them. So it's not always music, because that'll help with like live shows and writing. Just you can vibe, and
Cool. And then David?
Yeah, I would say be kind to everyone. Whether it be like Jordan said with these people, if you're a singer-songwriter, be kind to the people that you're trying to attract to play with you in shows or record with you or whatever it is. Or if you are trying to be in a band, be kind to your band members. Be kind to the people at every venue you're at. Like I think we want people to remember us because it was a good show and we played well, but we also want the sound guy who's just, we're the fourth band of the night and he's exhausted, to like feel like we were different than the D-bags who were just before us, that were just like, they're living it up like rock stars. Like, we want to be the guys that were like, hey man, like, thank you so much for doing sound. Like, that was awesome. and you're great, and we appreciate you. Like even just little snippets like that, like if people can remember that down the line, that's going to be, you know, that can change people. Like just those little moments, like that can change somebody's day. So I think be kind to everybody. But then at the same time, don't be a pushover when it matters. I think that, like Scott was saying, we struggled, or maybe it was Jordan, with our vision early on and realizing that we need to kind of make sure people know what our vision is, because labels aren't going to do it for you. Management's not going to do it for you. Make sure you have a vision about what you want to be or what your sound is after you've kind of done that nitty gritty stuff early on to figure out what your sound is. Once you find out what it is, like stay true to your vision and let people know what it is, because you do need to lead. Even if people come in and you kind of think like we did, like, oh, management's here or labels here, like we don't need to work or do as much, like they'll help shape us, but they won't. Like you still need to be who you are and lead the show, and then they'll kind of support you in what you're doing. And then I would say, like, to piggyback on something Scott said earlier, I think taking it one song at a time, one show at a time. If you look ahead all the time and, like you were saying too, nitpicking all your numbers and the money you've made or the people in the room, like how many people are in the room. I think our little mini tour we did, even for that last EP with Didn't See It Coming, there were still rooms in states that we had never played before that had 10 people in there. Like, just because we had a bunch of listeners, it doesn't mean that people in Austin, Texas know who we are. Like there's places we had never played and there's still rooms, even with all the listeners we had on Spotify and Apple Music, there's still small rooms with not a lot of people, but you still pour your heart into it. Like if we're just too worried about, oh, well, we just played a show to 200 people in Seattle, where's the 200 people in Austin? You're just going to hate your life. Like you need to just enjoy every moment and not look ahead all the time and think like, oh, I just played this show, every show is going to be like that now, or whatever it is. Like I think if you get way too worked up about the future and not just enjoy every moment and just focus on every moment, like I think that's what's helped keep us grounded, is just like one song at a time. It's like, I'm going to pour my heart into this song, I'm going to write the best song I can, and it's kind of out of your hands at that point. Like you don't have a ton of control over whether people like your music or not. Like you just got to do what you got to do, pour it into it, and people will like it or they won't. And that's just kind of how it is. Like until you get a massive label that can force bad music down your throat and we just are all robots and accept that it's good. I'm looking at you, Frank Ocean, that album's terrible. It's like, that's, unless you're them, and you can literally release garbage music and people, or no, it's Childish Gambino. It's his new album. New album's terrible. Don't listen to it.
You just dissed Frank Ocean.
I was going to say, David, you love Frank Ocean.
I got him mixed up because Childish Gambino
love that
Frank Ocean. He's trying to be Frank Ocean and it's not working. So his album is straight garbage, but he's on a big label, so people accept it and whatever. But if you're not that, which 99% of us aren't, just pour your heart into it and people they'll love it or they won't. And you just kind of have to keep chugging along and keep pouring your heart into it.
One thing I do love about you guys is that despite the skyrocketing numbers, you do seem pretty grounded. I mean, every time I listen to your music, it feels like I'm back in my hometown. I'm from a small suburban town in Fairfield, California, which there are a bunch of people, but everybody knows everybody. And I feel like when I listen to your music, I'm back in my hometown in a bar with maybe 5 to 10 people in it, drinking a Corona and just hanging out with my friends. So I'm very grateful to have you guys on the show. I know you have a song coming out on the 24th. Can you guys talk about it really quickly?
Yeah, it's called Own the Night. I don't know if we've actually said that yet, but whatever. This one, just for the little backgrounds, this one was actually the baby or the birth of this song was Eric, our bass player. He had kind of the main hook that he had written, which is kind of a little behind the scenes of our collaborative process. A lot of times one of us will have a hook, kind of just that chorus, and then we kind of just collaborate from there. So I think he had actually written the chorus. Super great. We're super excited for everyone to hear it. It's very like, if I were to tell you the inspiration or like a song that it'll remind you of.
It's very like Childish Gambino meets Frank Ocean.
Yeah, exactly. Meets Drake. No, it's like, no, it kind of has Nowhere to Run vibes. So I think people really like it. It's kind of that, like our original song, the very first song we started with. It kind of has that vibe, kind of chill, laid back, down tempo. But yeah, the collaborative process. Eric wrote the chorus. He's super. It was awesome. We loved it. I think we kind of collaborated on verses, but it should be good. It's kind of about just relationships and the kind of nitty-gritty part of relationships and how important just pouring kind of your energy into it even when you're not feeling it, and just kind of relationships are not just all romanticized and movie-like and La La Land and it's all pretty and whatever. It's like the movie La La Land. That's how.
Have you seen the ending of that movie, David? That's not all.
Okay, but like when I think of La La Land, I think of like the dance numbers.
Yeah, I got you.
They're like dancing in the stars, literally.
I love that movie.
Yeah, but it's just about like when stuff gets tough, you still gotta love on the person. Choose the one you love and love the one you choose. My mom always says that. Right there.
Cool. So On the Night will be available on all major platforms. And what is the best way that fans can reach out to you if they would like to learn more about anything from you or get some advice or just learn about your music? What's the best way to reach out to you?
I would say Instagram DM. Instagram is definitely the one we're most active on, which, by the way, sorry I didn't respond to your Instagram DM.
That's okay.
It's because we had already responded on email, so I just want to point that out. We really do respond on Instagram a lot. The email is also good, but I think if people just want to get to know us better too, we do have a website, mybrothersandiband.com, and we have blog posts on there too. We kind of just do a monthly blog post, and it could be anything. I think we did like a book one recently, just kind of books we're reading or whatever. It's really just kind of random stuff, and it's cool, and it's kind of shows you a little bit about us in a new light. We haven't really seen a whole lot of bands have like their own blog. So it's kind of a cool way for us to just express ourselves in a different way than just the music we release. So that's a cool thing to do, or cool thing for people to check out.